any opportunity for meaningful engagement for an individual at any stage in his supply process is an opportunity for that individual to participate in a system larger than themselves to help make something like modern flight possible. Not only does it perhaps improve one's quality of life in terms of their economic opportunity or their professional growth opportunity, but it contributes something to this ability for others to connect. Supply chain is, again, looking at something so vastly powerful and important, socially transformative, and making it sound like a machine. And I invite us to think much more holistically about the full implications of the flows of creation that we nurture into existence. My mission in life, though, is to celebrate the goodness of what we contribute through work individually.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Strategic Planning Room, the podcast where planning meets purpose and meaning. Today, we have a unique guest with us. We're honored to host Mr. Jeffrey Westphal. He is many, many things, and I'll let him introduce himself in his own words. But the most recent piece of the puzzle that Jeff added to his journey is authoring and publishing A Work Life Worth Living. This book is a must-have for anybody looking to find their purpose and meaning at work. So Jeff, welcome to the Strategic Planning Room. Thank you for joining us. And also thank you for being a gracious sponsor to our podcast. So I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. And pardon me if I don't get pronunciation right. Iman?
Iman is right. Thank you.
Iman. Okay, Iman. I know we spoke before, and I didn't want to make a mistake. It's an honor to be your guest. It's an honor to know you and to share a common sense of purpose in that there's so much more potential in business than we've been led to believe, most of us. And I guess the only way I could best introduce myself is to say that I was an extremely fortunate recipient of wise mentorship at a young age to help me see the deeper meaning of the work we were doing in sales tax software, of all things. And that led me to see the deeper meaning in so much other work. And for decades, I knew that ultimately my life's work was to help others see the meaning in their life's work. So thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So tell me a little bit about why you wrote this book and why now.
Well, I certainly am not trying to make a career as an author and sell as many books as I possibly can. In fact, that's about the last thing I'm trying to do. And when I first set out to write the book, believing that I needed a book to help provide support for the story I had and what I was trying to convey, I realized that actually what was truly needed was a place for people to take what they're learning from books and podcasts and have a safe place to apply that learning in the real world. And that, having a resource and a community of fellow seekers of deeper meaning in work would be far more valuable and frankly, much more of an empty space in the world than just one more book about how you could have more purpose in your work. And so really, I spent 5 years helping to cultivate MeaningSphere.com into existence. And then I came back to writing the book so that at least people who find MeaningSphere.com have an answer to the question, where did this come from? And who is this person? And should I trust him or not? So the purpose of the book really is so people have something to represent me, and they can assess whether or not MeaningSphere is truly coming from a place of higher purpose or whether it's just another effort to make a buck.
Okay. And for the audience, just so that they can better understand your journey, or professional journey rather, in the mid 1900s, you took on a family-owned business that's called Vertex in sales tax software, and you gave it your best for about 2 decades, and you built the business to becoming a quite considerable one. As a CEO, you retired around 2017, and then in 2020 it went public, and it is now valued in the billions. For someone who looks at it from the corporate side, this is a success story. But when we go through your book, the success story is not only the financial aspect of it, but also the personal journey and the journey of growth that you have undergone. I was pleased to see the 3 major components of your book, which is exploring, understanding, and acting, which eventually led you to become a voice of finding meaning. And MeaningSphere.com is one phenomenal platform to get to that level. So can you tell us a little bit about the time after Vertex and before creating MeaningSphere? How was your journey to decide to create an official platform to help others find purpose in the work they do?
Well, that is a question I haven't been asked before, and it's very provocative because I knew the dream. I knew what my dream was and the purpose I wanted to serve. But originally I thought, write a book, become a public speaker. That's what you do. And on a beautiful day, right around my retirement, walking along the coast there on the lakeshore in Milwaukee with Rich Schierling, who had been the CEO of Harley-Davidson for 15 years, of Harley's dramatic rise out of the ashes, as it were. I was talking about the book. I was talking about speaking. And he looks at me with this smile. And I just remember the look. That moment was timeless. And he says, "What's the purpose of the book?" Mm-hmm. Now, this is not a man or a person who asked me questions casually. And I knew what he meant was, I know you and I know your vision's bigger than this. What are you really trying to achieve? And the retirement happened. I don't know. I think maybe my retirement had just happened. And I took that to heart, but I didn't know what it meant. And it wasn't until my wife and I were on a celebration trip, sailing in the Indian Ocean, kind of as far away from humanity as one could get, that I had this moment of just instant inspiration. I don't know where it came from. It certainly wasn't a logical calculation. It certainly wasn't strategy in the normal sense of SWOT analysis. But in this one instant, I just knew that with today's abilities of technology, my knowledge of the industry, the remarkable resources that I was granted, that I could create a platform for anybody, anywhere, to create more meaning and fulfillment in the work they do, whatever that work is, whatever it is, without changing jobs necessarily. Mm-hmm. I just knew in that instant. And I realized in the next instant, that's what I'm meant to do. Like I knew immediately. I was drawing some diagrams about the connection between, developing software and all the things people get to enjoy because the taxes work properly, like a cup of coffee or, the car they drive or whatever. And, how do I visually explain this? And then I'm like, you know what? Boom. It was just like, of course, I can help people connect to these ideas at a scale that never before was possible. And so MeaningSphere 1.0 that anyone would see on the internet today is really step one in a rather significant vision to help people see, the connections of meaning throughout all the work we do.
So if somebody was interested in being involved with MeaningSphere, what should they do?
Well, go to MeaningSphere.com, and the first step for anyone at any time is to get in touch with what matters to me now, personally, about my work life, right? Because it changes. The leading research in the field makes it very clear that people's internal sense of meaning changes over time as their life circumstances externally and internally change. For example, at one point in one's career, mastering a new skill or a new knowledge might be just the most exciting and meaningful thing. And that's happening today for many people, regardless of their level of experience, as they grasp what does AI mean and not mean, for example. For some people, it's terrifying and they don't want to know. For other people, it's like the coolest thing and they can't wait to learn more, right? But it's very meaningful in many different ways. If you've just been let go and the boss told you it's because AI could replace you, that's meaningful. Meaning doesn't mean happy. Meaning means impactful, that you really care about what's happening. And difficult changes are often the most meaningful opportunities. And that sounds cliche, but in my experience, it's anything but. So anyhow, the point simply being, MeaningSphere right now in its first instantation begins at the beginning. What really matters to you? And upon that platform, individuals who use MeaningSphere can build a simple plan to work toward more of what works for you right now while you learn more about what truly matters to you. And that begins a process. And then later this summer, we'll have our first release of community capability, and we'll grow from there. So go to MeaningSphere.com.
Very
Now,
good.
if you're listening to this and if you're listening and you're Oprah Winfrey, feel free to give me a call and I'll chat with you about the meaning of work.
That's wonderful. Culture is somehow becoming also a cliche, the importance of culture in the workplace. And reading through your book, finding meaning is not only important from the bottoms up. Finding a meaning as a leader is important because you can drive a culture of impact, a culture of really connecting the dots for the workforce to understand the greater good of what they are trying to do. And going back to your definition of meaning as something being impactful, not necessarily just important at the moment, but what is the long-term impact? How would you do to make sure that leaders understand the importance of meaning and impact and to drive it to their workforce on a daily basis?
Well, that is such a rich question. First and foremost, right? Leader, know thyself. I wouldn't drive anything anywhere if I didn't know deeply where I was going and why. Because the one thing people pay attention to more than any words or any policies or anything is, how to put it? Well, let's put it this way. They know when people are real and they know when they're faking it. And you can't fake meaning. You can't fake that you really care. Full stop. So I've said to a couple people who want to buy my book and give it to their employees. And I'm like, I wouldn't do that. Would I like you to buy 20 books or 100 books, whatever? Sure. But, don't just give it to your employees because they need this. Spend a year with it and get to really know yourself and what you really care about the work you're doing. And then talk to your people about what they care about. Ask them, don't tell them, don't give them a book to read. You're not the teacher. They've had the teacher. And remember, while your heart is pure, while you want the best for people, unfortunately, our institutions and many other leaders have not treated people that way. And so they're inherently suspicious. It's not you. It's the system and the environment we're in, the greater culture. So, you can't be Solomon in your own home, particularly if you have a big title. And so I would say focus on you, be the change you want to see, and ask, don't tell.
That's a great advice. Thank you. And, people in different industries can find that meaning easier than other industries. So, as an example, I spent my entire life trying to find an industry where I would really, really find a purpose and a meaning in what I do. And I landed on life sciences and biotech to help support pharmaceutical companies find life-saving or produce life-saving drugs and develop them from scratch. And for me, it's easier for my team and my coworkers to find that meaning, because at the end of the day, there is a patient out there hoping that a drug will be developed to save their lives and to be acknowledged as an illness that needs to be cured. How would the sense of finding meaning apply to industries that don't necessarily have that direct correlation with saving people's lives and doing things of that nature?
When we met, I knew that we were kindred spirits and that you would bring special insight to this opportunity and that question that gets right at the heart of something powerful. Two thoughts. First is, when my cardiologist asked me about what I was doing for work and how was my stress level, I took note. Now, I'd been with him a long time, but I thought, this is unusual. And I asked him why he was asking me that. He said, well, he had had a life experience, and it sort of changed his practice of cardiology to really begin to attend to the needs of the whole person, the soul, the heart of the heart, as well as the mechanism of the heart. And I said, well, funny you should say that, because I've been helping people who do mundane work to find the meaning and purpose in their work, because so many people aren't like a cardiologist who has a direct sense of meaningful impact every day. And he says, you would think, but I can't tell you how vast the problem is in the entire medical field, where there's so much emphasis on numbers, so much emphasis on regulation, so much emphasis on performance, so much that almost everyone has lost sight of the meaning of why they got in it in the first place. He says it's an epidemic. So he's actually collaborating with me now on how to help MeaningSphere have a special offering for people in the medical industry. So when you say, how can you help people who don't have that kind of opportunity? I am fresh off of an hour-and-a-half call with him this week to talk about how we can help people who you would think never forget just how important their work is. That's how challenging the situation has become. So then the flip side of that is, what I found by inviting people in something as mundane as sales and value-added tax processing and payroll tax processing, telecommunications tax processing, how to help them. Well, I realized, because my mentor didn't explain it to me, I certainly shouldn't try to explain it to them. So we engaged everybody in opportunities facilitated professionally to ask themselves, how does our work connect to larger meaning for you? And, some of them saw that without our work, people can't get what they want from Amazon to make their lives better, can't get what they want from Starbucks to enjoy a coffee over a meaningful conversation with a friend. That extra couple of steps from the tax transaction to the cup of coffee, that, it's essential, because if there's no tax transaction, Starbucks can't do business anywhere. Mm-hmm. Full stop. Illegal, right? So it is literally coffee enabling technology. And given an opportunity, people can connect those dots. And some of them are like, wow, I get it. I like it. Others were like, oh, okay, interesting, but not direct enough for me. What they would lift up is mentoring a young colleague, helping them, being there for a coworker who's going through a life change, having the culture or the flexibility to be able to attend to a situation at home. Other personal things are more meaningful. The quality of relationships with their peers. These are all, and also research supported dimensions of meaningful work beyond just sort of the, what does the product do for the larger world? So there's huge opportunity in the world that you would think where meaning is really evident, as well as in the world that you think it would be impossible to connect to something meaningful. I wish I could give you a shorter answer, Imam,
That's
but
great. No,
yeah,
please.
yeah.
That's a great answer. And sometimes it is about what you do with what you end up collecting from your work. So as an example, it's not only the work itself, it's using the work you do for a higher purpose to help somebody else, a family member in need, or somebody who needs your support. So sometimes my point is, it's not only finding meaning in only the work you do, but also what is that going to contribute to. In business school, they teach us about the compelling why, the real reason somebody goes to work and goes the extra mile. And it's not a one size fits all. It's not one formula for everybody. And that's why, to the point earlier, having a strategy to have leaders, channel down, this is the meaning of what we do, and then that's it, might be a limiting factor because it's a personal journey at the end of the day. And you and I talked briefly in our first interaction about the importance of the supply chain. So the core of this podcast is about planning, strategic planning, which often is a business process, but it tends to be visible on its impact on the supply chain. When COVID happened, for me, I look at it as a blessing in disguise, because a field like supply chain management that was always taken for granted, because when things work, you don't value them. But when COVID happened, it really propelled planning and supply chain management to a level that was never hoped before, to the point where universities are now offering supply chain degrees on an ongoing basis. People of my cohort had to kind of stumble on supply chain management in universities because it was different. But you told me a story about taking a scan one day and then looking at a screw and then thinking somebody somewhere, and I'm not going to ruin the story. Would you mind sharing that story, please?
I thought you were going to say this story about how my wife has to tell me to stop thanking the stock person at the grocery store for making my life possible today, because, in the middle of COVID, those people were truly on life or death front lines, the truckers, the people who kept food on the table. We don't live in small villages next to the farm anymore with canned goods in our basement. We're literally, the great majority of the entire U.S. population is completely dependent upon the nourishment chain. I won't even call supply chain. We literally have taken the meaning out of the work we do to put food on the table so people can survive. Could you imagine if our distribution systems all ground to a halt? It would be famine. Millions marching to the Midlands to try to find food, because we're completely dependent on systems we don't even know exist. That's what I thought about during COVID. And yes, I walked around thanking people who were putting asparagus on the shelf that I was able to buy it, So anyhow, that's where I thought you were going to go. The other thing that did occur is when I was in treatment for multiple myeloma, and I have a very, very fabulous long-term prognosis for long-term health, like decades of health. But just a few years ago, 2023, end of 23, I'm on the radiation machine, and it's a gigantic piece of marvelous technology, right? Each machine must cost tens of millions of dollars. And I'm laying there, and there's a plate that sits above you, big glass plate like this. And I look, and there's one screw holding a little flange that holds the plate in place. And I'm thinking, and of course I'm nuts this way, but I don't believe this is hard to understand. It's just, what are you thinking about? And I look at that screw and I think, I wonder if the person who made that screw realizes they are a part of saving my life. Because if there's no screw, there's no plate. There's no plate, there's no machine. There's no machine, there's no radiation to get the cancer off of my spine. You get it. So, you don't need to be Einstein to see the connections. The challenge is that we've all been living in a universe that has said, focus on the performance of this thing, this thing you're involved in, your job, the school class you're in, the result you're supposed to get. And maybe the why is, so 7 years from now you can get a better job, or so, the company's earnings can be better. But are we really having conversations about this thing is a part of this thing? And that thing brings joy into the world. And in many cases, that thing saves lives or makes lives possible. And if you think about what most everything we do actually contributes to, mm-hmm. We are serving our own basic human needs for health, wellness, growth, entertainment, connection, learning. These basic human needs are basically what we're all doing. It's just that we become so specialized in the little parts, the little screws, that we've lost sight of the big picture.
100%.
So, yeah, it was a moment, but like I said, I'm a little crazy about this stuff.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. If we think of the concept of a bill of material, to make anything, you need multiple components. The way I look at it is every little component might touch so many other people down or upstream of the supply chain. Just to make this book as an example, where did the paper come from? Where did the ink come from? Where did the glue come from? And if we think about that connection you just mentioned, I see a higher purpose in supply chains overall, because to make any good, we are touching so many people's livelihood along the way to find a job, find a meaning of their own. So I think that idea of connectivity that is behind the supply chain is very interesting and often undervalued. So any comments on that?
Well, if you want to, I'll zoom out a little bit on what you're saying. So of course, any opportunity for meaningful engagement for an individual at any stage in the supply process, or what I'll call a meaningful creation process, is an opportunity for that individual to participate in a system larger than themselves to help make something like modern flight possible. Think about the miracle of that and all the components from all the for-profit businesses that make it possible to travel to see one's family in another country, right? So to even participate in that, not only does it perhaps improve one's quality of life in terms of their economic opportunity or their professional growth opportunity, but it contributes something to this ability for others to connect. But I'd add that these chains, I don't think of them as chains. It's a very mechanical concept. If you think of all the human blood, sweat, and tears that gets invested in the creation, evolution, management, maintenance, development, growth of these flows, I think of them more like a living thing, and I think of them as a source of global transformation because of the ability of creative flows to engage in ways that are uplifting. Now, that's an optimistic view, and I'm not a corporate apologist for bad or abusive behavior. And I think sometimes those flows can be over optimized in destructive ways. Okay. And I understand that. So I'm not an apologist. I'm definitely not an apologist for General Motors taking 16 years to finally admit that their ignition switches were faulty and were killing people. There are too many examples of corporations not acting on knowledge of harm that their products are doing for me to be apologist about corporate behavior. And my mission in life is not to whitewash corporate behavior. My mission in life, though, is to celebrate the goodness of what we contribute through work individually. And hopefully that raises the bar on corporate policy and corporate behavior from the C-suite throughout its entire ecosystem of supply and delivery.
Yeah.
But so sorry for that sidebar, but I think I haven't had a chance to speak to that publicly. So long and short of it is these supply chain is, again, looking at something so vastly powerful and important, socially transformative, and making it sound like a machine. And I invite us to think much more holistically about the full implications of the flows of creation that we nurture into existence.
Yeah, that's a great answer. When you talked about global transformation and celebrating the goodness of what we contribute to, and supply chain not really being just a mechanic thing, but it connects so many humans, it only leads me to think of AI again. And you had a part in your book where you described this scene where you are on the shore of a lake, and you were living that experience, and you were thinking that AI cannot feel necessarily, but AI is here with us now, and so many people are feeling that it's threatening them in terms of their livelihood. I think we are at a point where we need to learn how to coexist with AI and how to use it as a tool. So, and maybe use AI as a way to bring more meaning to our lives. If we can free up a little bit of time and be more efficient, we can do so many other things that artificial intelligence cannot do. So, what is your take on the future of AI and how it would impact this idea of finding meaning and impact in what we do?
Look, that is the question. So many people with so much more experience than I are grappling with. So I don't claim any special wisdom at all in this arena. I'll share a hope and a belief. Because I believe humans ultimately are seeking to serve each other, to help each other, to see our fellow man, woman, partners, communities thrive and survive. I think we will innovate and create amazing ways to bring wellness and prosperity to the billions of people who are still living in subsistence all throughout the world and who are unserved by technology, by all these wonders that we've created in the West. I think the young people that I've spoken to at Drexel University and at a number of universities, they're going to leverage this technology for the good of mankind, humankind. And I've traveled all over the world. When I go places, I don't just go to the tourist places. I go and get involved in communities. There is such opportunity to create solutions at costs that anyone can afford to bring basics of health, wellness, and opportunity to all these people, and in a way that creates opportunity for people who are used to opportunities. We have a vast untouched and untapped opportunity, and I think that's a part of why we created AI and robotics and everything in the first place. We didn't create machines to somehow serve the machines who can't experience joy. I just refuse to believe that. So, yeah, I've never tried to express that before. So thank you for presenting me the opportunity.
Yeah, you're welcome. And for the young readers, the emerging leaders, and people early in their career, what would be a summary that you would like to give them from your book? What would be a recommendation?
The essence of it is this: if you're waiting for your boss or the CEO or the C-suite or the board or the shareholders or Wall Street to somehow bring meaning and fulfillment into your life and career, you're going to be waiting a long time, because they're dealing with the whole bunch of stuff that, these are good people working hard. It's extremely difficult to do cultural transformation. So, and I'm getting to a simple answer a very long way. So what I'm going to say is this: you have all the control of the biggest lever there is for your own fulfillment, and that is you, and how you choose to see the world, how you choose to see your work, how you choose to see yourself. And my book hopefully will help you have a sense that learning to see yourself and to kind of reframe who you are, why you are, what you are in the world around you, including your work, is often a difficult journey. And that's also the gift of it. So I wish for the reader, I wish for anyone, the opportunity to take life's and careers' inherent challenges and conflicts and difficulties and turn it into insight and sources of fulfillment. And I know that sounds so Pollyanna or whatever, but it's so true. And whether it was our son's autism or my own alcoholism, the worst things that have ever happened to me have become the best things that ever happened for me.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
I wish the same for anyone. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mom.
Well, I think there is still one last question I would like to ask you, and that is, we understand that finding meaning is a personal journey, but it's a responsibility for people in leadership positions. And if it's not addressed on purpose, and if it's not carved out as an agenda talking point in board discussions, then employees might have a harder time really realizing that meaning sometimes. So what would be your advice to leaders to help their organizations at least have an early view of what meaning could be?
Well, if I were to speak to business leaders from a classic business perspective, I would say, ask AI about the growth of the movement toward meaningful work over the past 10 years, the number of books sold, the individuals who are championing these ideas, and the size of their audiences, what the research says about what workers are wanting. And it's no longer pie in the sky 40 years from now that leaders will need to be attending to and connected to the meaning drivers of work. It is rapidly becoming a table stakes. And so if you have a view of value creation beyond just the next 3 to 5 years, you have to have a view about what really matters about the work you're doing, or the talent is going to go elsewhere. So that's kind of the hard bottom line of it. If you want to compete, you better know why you're competing, not just to win for the sake of winning. Young people have figured that out. I was just talking to a gentleman, very, very successful, extremely, influential entrepreneur in the Philadelphia area who teaches at one of the Ivy League colleges. And he was approached recently by top tier corporate recruiters saying, they're not coming. Why are they not coming? We've offered 30% more than what they decided to do. And this individual who's no, Gandhi, he's like, guys, you got to get over it. They're not wanting top dollar anymore. They know they're worth top dollar. They're wanting to have an impact. They're wanting to give a chance for something they truly care about before they give that up to just make as much money as they can. Mm-hmm. And he's talking about people coming out of one of the most significant business schools in the world. So it's happening, and it's going to have a real impact. It's not a threat. It's just counsel. If I was a board member, I'd be saying to our CEO, how are you staying in touch with what really matters to you in your heart about the work you're doing? And I don't want to hear you talk about shareholder value. Shareholder value is a trailing indicator of meaningful connection, not the other way around. Not sustainable shareholder value. You can extract shareholder value from anything if that's all you want to do in 3 to 5 years. That's not hard. What's hard is building sustainable shareholder value over 10, 20, 30 years, like we did at my company.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you. So what's next for Jeff?
Oh, well, I finally get to do what I've dreamt of doing for 30 years, which is exactly this. When I first mentioned to my editor, Betty Sue, about wanting to write a book, she asked me about why and what's the book about. And I told her that we've been doing this at the company, practicing these principles at our company for 20, 25 years. And she said, you've never told anybody? You've never spoken about it? You've never written anything about it? And I said, well, no. I knew with my mentor when I first realized that work mattered so much more than I thought, that nobody's going to believe me if I haven't accomplished anything. So, job one was to, do it. And boy, did that teach me that these are easy things to talk about. They're hard things to do in the real world. And but we put our heads down and we stuck with it, and we think it mattered. We think it made a difference. And so now, as I look toward retirement, I think I've accomplished enough that maybe somebody will pay attention. So, anywho, what's next for me is exactly what we're doing right now. This is it. This is my life's work and my dream come true. And I'm going to do it until I can't do it anymore.
Well, thank you so much, and congratulations on your new book. Thank you for everything you're doing to bring people back to the importance of finding meaning and impact. I am honored to having had you as a guest today on the podcast, and thank you for your continuous support. And you're welcome to come back at any moment to the strategic planning room. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. And had I known you'd be so elegant and so well framed and staged for your podcast, I would have shown up in something more than a Phillies t-shirt. No, I'll be better next time.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good to be with you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.